The cabin was calm at 31,000 feet. The plane moved smoothly above the clouds, and most passengers had settled into their own small worlds. Some were watching movies. Some were asleep. Others stared quietly out of the window. Seat 12C was no different. A woman sat there quietly, hands folded, eyes half closed, looking like just another tired traveler on a long flight. She did not draw attention. She wore simple clothes, no uniform, no badges, no signs that made anyone curious. The flight attendants passed her without a second look. To them, she was just another passenger going from one city to another. Nothing special. Nothing unusual. But inside her, everything was alert. She listened carefully to the sounds of the aircraft. The low hum of the engines, the small changes in vibration, the way the plane adjusted its pitch. These were not just noises to her, they were signals. Old habits she never fully lost made her notice things others ignored. The flight had been peaceful for almost 2 hours. The captain had already spoken once, calmly explaining the weather ahead and the expected landing time. Passengers felt safe, relaxed, comfortable. Then something changed. It was small at first. So small that no one around noticed. The woman in 12C felt it before she heard it. A faint shift in pressure. A strange tension in the air. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked toward the window, her reflection faint against the bright sky. Far away, barely visible, something moved. At first, it looked like a dark speck against the clouds. Too fast, too sharp. Her body reacted before her mind fully caught up. Her breathing slowed. Her posture changed slightly, straightening without effort. A jet, not a commercial plane. She knew the difference instantly. The object grew larger in seconds. It was moving fast, much faster than any passenger aircraft. The woman's gaze followed it carefully, measuring distance and speed without realizing she was doing it. Around her, people laughed softly. A child dropped a toy. A man asked for water. Life continued, unaware. Then the plane shuddered. Not violently. Just enough. A low murmur passed through the cabin. Some passengers looked up. A few glanced around, confused but not afraid. Turbulence, they assumed. The woman in 12C did not assume. She looked toward the wing now. The jet was closer. Much closer than it should be. Her jaw tightened slightly. This was not normal. The seatbelt sign clicked on. A quiet chime echoed through the cabin. The flight attendants paused, exchanging quick looks. One of them reached for the intercom and stopped, as if waiting for instructions. The captain's voice did not come. Immediately, seconds passed. The jet outside moved into clearer view. Some passengers near the windows gasped. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Is that a fighter jet?" Fear began to creep in, slow and uncertain. The woman in 12C kept her eyes steady. Her hands rested calmly on her knees, but inside, memories stirred. Training, simulations, emergency drills. Voices shouting instructions long ago. Skies that were never peaceful. She had promised herself she was done with that life. But the sky has a way of calling people back. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen." The captain began, his voice controlled but tighter than before. "Please remain seated. We are coordinating with air traffic control." That was all he said. No reassurance. No jokes. The jet was now flying parallel to the plane. Close enough that its shape was clear. Sharp lines. Hard angles. Built for speed and power, not comfort. The cabin filled with nervous whispers. Why is it so close? Is this normal? Are we in danger? A flight attendant walked down the aisle, trying to smile, trying to stay calm. When she passed Seat 12C, she noticed the woman watching the jet with focused eyes. Not fear, their eyes met for a brief moment. The flight attendant hesitated. Something about this passenger felt different. Another announcement came through, shorter this time. "We ask everyone to stay calm." Still no explanation. The woman in 12C slowly unclasped her hands. She leaned back, her face composed, but her mind was already working through possibilities. Communication failure, airspace violation, escort, procedure, intercept. She knew these scenarios. She never thought she would see one again from a passenger seat. Outside, the fighter jet adjusted its position, moving slightly closer, then holding steady. It was no longer just passing by. It was watching them. The woman took a slow breath. Whatever was happening, this was not an accident, and she knew deep down that before this flight ended, she would no longer be invisible in seat 12C. The cabin grew quieter, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that slowly tightens the space around everyone. People tried to pretend everything was fine, but their eyes kept drifting toward the windows. Even those who feared flying were now brave enough to look outside, because curiosity was stronger than fear. The fighter jet stayed too close for comfort. Its metal body shined under the sunlight, its movements sharp and controlled. It wasn't drifting. It wasn't passing. It was escorting. Or warning. The woman in seat 12C felt a familiar chill travel through her chest. She had felt it years ago, in a cockpit filled with alarms. She blinked slowly, trying to calm her breathing. She reminded herself she was no longer that person. She was no longer the one who had to make decisions at high altitude. She was just a passenger now. But the sky does not care about the names printed on boarding passes. The captain still hadn't given a proper update. That silence worried her more than the jet outside. She studied the faces around her. A young mother holding her child tighter. A teenager recording the jet with shaking hands. An elderly man whispering a prayer. Everyone responded in their own way, trying to understand something they could not explain. Then, something unexpected happened. The fighter jet tilted slightly, almost like a nod, one strange, crisp movement. The woman in 12C recognized that motion immediately. It was a signal. A simple, silent message used only in serious situations. Her heart tightened. She was sure now. This was not routine. This was an intercept. The cockpit door opened for a split second. A flight attendant slipped inside quickly, but in that moment, the woman caught a glimpse of the captain's posture, leaning forward, radio pressed tightly against his ear, eyes intense. Not calm at all. A beep ran across the speakers. The captain came back on. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a trained aviation professional on board, please make yourself known to the crew immediately. Gasps spread through the cabin. Passengers turned to one another, confused. Someone asked loudly, "Why? What's happening?" No one answered. The woman in 12C kept her eyes down, trying to remain invisible, but people were already scanning the rows, looking for someone who fit the role. A man in business clothes shook his head quickly. A student shrugged. No one stood up. The woman stayed still. Years of discipline taught her how to control her expression, how to appear calm even when her pulse raced. She wanted to stay quiet. She wanted this to be someone else's responsibility. She wanted to believe they would figure it out without her. But then she saw the flight attendant walking back down the aisle. This time, the woman in 12C noticed the fear hiding beneath the forced smile. She noticed the trembling hands. She noticed how the attendant kept glancing toward the windows, then toward the cockpit. When their eyes met again, the attendant paused beside her seat. "Ma'am, are you okay?" she asked softly. The woman nodded, but her silence did not convince the attendant. Something about her calmness stood out too much now. "Did you maybe hear the announcement?" the attendant asked, voice shaking slightly. "Yes," the woman said quietly. "And are you by any chance?" "No." She answered too quickly. Then she corrected herself. "I used to be, a long time ago." The flight attendant's breath caught. She tried to hide her reaction, but her eyes widened. The woman in 12C looked down at her own hands. They were steady. They always were. Even when her heart wasn't. The attendant leaned closer. The captain asked for help. "If you know anything at all, please." Her voice trailed off. The woman looked past her, toward the jet still watching them like a silent guardian, or a silent threat. Whatever was happening, the crew was running out of time. And the fighter jet wasn't waiting for explanations. The woman in 12C took a slow, heavy breath. She knew what she had to do. Even if she didn't want to. Even if she promised herself she never would again. Some skies don't let you walk away from who you were. She unbuckled her seatbelt quietly. Passengers around her turned to look. The flight attendant stepped back, eyes full of hope and fear at the same time. The woman rose to her feet. And for the first time on this flight, everyone noticed her. All eyes followed her as she stepped into the aisle, but she kept her gaze steady, refusing to let the moment overwhelm her. She had walked down narrow aircraft aisles countless times in her past life, but it had never felt like this. Back then, she was in uniform. Back then, she carried authority. Now she wore nothing but quiet confidence and a past she never planned to reveal. The flight attendant walked slightly ahead of her, guiding her toward the front, but even she kept glancing back, as if trying to understand who this quiet passenger in 12C really was. People whispered as she passed. Some pulled their phones down, no longer interested in filming the fighter jet outside. They watched her instead. "Do you think she's a pilot? She doesn't look like one. Maybe she's someone important." But the woman didn't react. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here because the sky had forced her back into a world she thought was behind her. Halfway to the cockpit, something unexpected happened. The plane shifted again, not turbulence this time. A controlled, precise adjustment, the kind pilots make when responding to instructions they don't fully agree with. The woman felt the change instantly. It made her footsteps slow, whatever message the fighter jet had brought. It was serious. A child in a window seat stared out and shouted, "It's still there. It's right next to us." His voice carried through the cabin. Mothers comforted their children. Men sat stiffly. Some passengers closed their eyes, praying silently. But the woman kept walking. When they reached the front, the flight attendant stopped and lowered her voice. "Before we go inside, the captain is stressed. He's been trying to get a stable signal to air control, but the jet outside is sending different instructions. He doesn't know why." The woman nodded once, understanding more from that one sentence than the attendant realized. Inside the cockpit, she found the captain and first officer busy, too busy. Screens flashed, radios crackled. Warning lights blinked randomly. Both pilots looked up when she entered, startled to see a civilian in their sacred workspace. The captain spoke first. "Man, the crew said you might have aviation experience." "I do," she replied calmly. "Civilian or military?" She did not answer immediately. The two pilots exchanged a glance. The silence told them everything. They were not speaking to an ordinary former pilot. The captain exhaled shakily. "We're in restricted airspace. We didn't receive any notice. The fighter jet approached us without radio contact. Air traffic control isn't giving clear instructions." The woman stepped closer, her eyes scanning the panels, the indicators, the sky outside. The jet moved slightly, maintaining its close distance. "What has it signaled?" she asked. The captain blinked. "You recognized it signaled us." She nodded. "What did it ask for?" The first officer hesitated. "It wants identification confirmation." "And you responded?" "We tried. They didn't accept it." She took another breath, deeper this time, steadying herself. This situation was more complicated than she'd hoped. The jet wasn't here by mistake. It wasn't here for an escort. It was here for someone. She looked out the cockpit window again. The fighter jet's nose dipped slightly, another signal. A message only a certain group of people in the world would understand. Her throat tightened. She had trained pilots to use that signal. The captain noticed her expression. "Ma'am, is there something we need to know?" The woman didn't answer. Right away, she stared at the sky, at the jet that had found them at 31,000 feet without explanation. The captain repeated softly, "Is the jet here for you?" Her heart hammered once hard, as if trying to escape her chest. She had left that world years ago. She had disappeared quietly. She had given no traces. And yet, here it was. Her past had caught up to her in the middle of a commercial flight, above the clouds, in front of hundreds of innocent people. She finally spoke, her voice low but unwavering. "They're not requesting identification from the aircraft," she said. Both pilots froze. "They're requesting identification from me." The cockpit fell silent. The fighter jet outside held its position, and far below. The passengers had no idea that seat 12C had just become the center of the entire sky. The captain stared at her, trying to process her words as the cockpit filled with the low hum of tension. The first officer leaned back slowly in his seat, as if realizing the situation had quietly shifted from unusual to extraordinary. The woman in 12C kept her eyes on the fighter jet outside. Its movements were deliberate, precise, like a surgeon's. Hand in the sky, it wasn't threatening the plane. It wasn't acting out of confusion. It was waiting, watching. And she knew exactly what it was waiting for. The captain spoke again, this time more carefully. "Ma'am, if they're trying to identify you, then who are you?" She didn't answer. She wasn't ready to say it, not out loud, not here, not like this. She had worked so hard to put that part of her life away. Years of training, missions, countless hours in the sky, all folded into silence. She had become someone else, a quiet traveler, a name no one looked at twice. But now the sky itself had come looking for her. Without speaking, she leaned toward the forward window. Her eyes followed the fighter jet's wing movements, small coded gestures that only trained personnel would understand. They weren't commands, they weren't warnings. They were a request, a specific one, a request directed only at her. The captain watched her closely. He wasn't frightened anymore, he was curious. "You understand those signals, don't you?" "Yes," she finally said. "I understand all of them." The first officer whispered, "Are they trying to confirm a call sign?" She nodded slightly. That word "call sign" filled the cockpit with a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of realization. Call signs weren't civilian. They belonged to people who had flown in missions. At high altitudes, people who had served in skies where mistakes cost lives. The captain swallowed. "If you had a call sign, what was it?" She looked away from the window, her expression tightening. "I haven't used it in years." The fighter jet shifted again, almost impatiently. "Do you want me to respond?" The captain asked quietly. "No." She said firmly, "They're not asking you, they're asking me." Another flicker of movement caught her eye. A second fighter jet appeared on the far left, coming in from the clouds, joining formation. The passengers would start noticing. Soon, panic might spread. The situation was no longer something the crew could hide. The captain exhaled sharply. "This is turning into a military intercept." "Not exactly," she murmured. "Interceptions are aggressive. This is deliberate. Controlled. They're not here to engage your aircraft. They're here because something or someone is on board." Her words hung in the air. The first officer turned toward her slowly. "Why would they come for you on a commercial flight? Why now?" She didn't have an answer yet. She wasn't even sure she wanted one. Her past had been closed. Cleanly, no mistakes, no loose threads. She had done her duty. She had left quietly. No one was supposed to come after her, unless something had changed. Unless someone had opened a file that should have stayed buried. unless she had been found. The captain turned to her with a final look of urgency. "We need to tell the passengers something. They're already filming the jets. They want answers." She nodded. "Tell them it's just an escort procedure. Don't explain more yet. If they know what's really happening, the fear will spread too fast." "And you?" he asked. "What will you do?" She took a deep breath, one that felt heavier than any she had taken on this flight. "I need to speak to them," she said quietly, gesturing toward the fighter jets. "They won't leave until they hear from me." The captain blinked. "Speak to them? How?" She reached toward the aircraft radio panel, not to touch it, but to look at the frequency display. A faint, unfamiliar signal blinked on one reserved channel. It wasn't meant for commercial use. It was encrypted. Military origin. They had already opened the channel. They were waiting for her voice. She stepped back, her hands steady, though her heart fought to stay calm. This wasn't just a jet rushing toward a commercial plane. This wasn't just a signal requesting identification. This was a summons. A quiet voice from the sky calling back someone it had lost. The captain whispered, almost afraid of the answer, "What will you say to them?" She closed her eyes for one brief second. When she opened them, they held the calm of someone who had once flown among storms. "The truth," she said softly. "The truth they never expected to hear again." The cockpit felt smaller now, as if the air itself had pulled tighter around them. The fighter jets held their formation outside, steady and unblinking, like guardians frozen in the sky. The woman in 12C stood between the pilots, silent for a long moment, deciding whether she was ready to step back into a world she had walked away from without saying goodbye. The captain waited. The first officer waited. Even the sky seemed to wait. She finally leaned closer to the radio panel, but she didn't touch it yet. Her fingers hovered just above the controls, remembering every switch, every frequency, every emergency protocol she once knew without thinking. Muscle memory threatened to take over, but she forced herself to stay still. This wasn't her aircraft. This wasn't her mission. She was only here because fate had pulled her back into a story she no longer wanted. "Before I speak to them," she said quietly, "I need to know what happened before the jet appeared. Any unusual calls? Any strange signals?" The captain rubbed the back of his neck. "There was one thing. A message that came through on a frequency we don't normally use. It wasn't clear, just a short burst of encrypted audio. Do you still have it?" she asked. The first officer tapped a few buttons, replaying a small distorted sound, a hollow tone, followed by a short coded pulse. Something old, something official, something that sent a cold wave down her spine. She recognized it. It was a recall code, something only issued when someone who had vanished needed to be found. Her breath slowed. She looked out the window again, meeting the gaze of the nearest jet, its cockpit shield reflecting the sun, hiding the pilot inside. But she could feel the message clearly. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't coincidence. Someone had activated her old identity. Someone wanted her back. The captain's voice pulled her back. "If they're calling for you, what do they expect? Orders? A status check? Confirmation that you're alive?" She closed her eyes for a moment. "They expect me to answer with my call sign. If I do, it changes everything. And if you don't," he asked, "they'll assume I'm in danger. Or that this aircraft is." The pilot stared at her, realizing just how serious this was. Before she could decide, the door behind her opened slightly. A flight attendant stepped inside, her face pale, her voice tense. "Passengers are scared. Someone said they saw too. Jets now. We need something to calm them." The captain nodded. "Tell them it's an escort due to a communication error. No details." The attendant hesitated, then whispered, "People are asking if this is a hijack." The woman in 12C stepped forward gently. "It's not. but please don't let anyone panic. Fear spreads fast in the air. The attendant studied her face calm, steady, strangely sure, and nodded before leaving. The cockpit door closed. Again, the silence returned. The woman finally reached for the radio. Her fingers rested lightly on the switch. The encrypted channel blinked slowly, waiting. The captain and first officer leaned back, giving her space. They knew this wasn't something they could control anymore. She inhaled deeply, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then something unexpected stopped her. A soft knock on the cockpit door. 3 quick taps. Light. Nervous. The captain opened it slightly. A man from the cabin stood there, breathing heavily, holding his phone in his shaking hand. "Sorry," he whispered, "but you need to see this." He turned the screen toward them. A live broadcast played, news headlines flashing at the bottom. Military jets dispatched over unidentified passenger on commercial flight. The anchor's serious voice filled the cockpit. The military confirms they are attempting contact with a former classified pilot believed to be on board this flight. Her identity was never released. Only her call sign is known. The woman in 12C felt the world tilt for a moment. Her secret wasn't a secret anymore. The man swallowed hard, eyes darting between her and the pilots. "Is it her?" The captain closed the door quickly before panic reached the cabin. Inside, the woman stood frozen. The encrypted radio channel blinked again, this time faster. Like a heartbeat, the sky was calling her, loudly now. The captain spoke softly, almost respectfully. "We need you to tell us your call sign." Her eyes trembled for the first time since the flight began. She whispered, barely audible, "They called me Echo 9. The jets outside shifted instantly, as if acknowledging her voice even before it reached the radio. The past she had buried had finally found her at 31,000 feet, and now Echo 9 had no choice but to return. The cockpit felt different the moment she said it. Echo 9, a name that didn't belong to a normal life, a normal seat, or a normal flight. It belonged to skies where silence could be deadly and decisions had to be made faster than fear could rise. The captain straightened slightly, as if the weight of that call sign filled the small space around them. The first officer stared at her with a mixture of disbelief and respect. Outside, the fighter jets adjusted formation, subtle but unmistakable, like soldiers standing at attention when their commanding officer walked into the room. They recognized her, the woman. No, Echo 9 felt her heartbeat slow into an old rhythm when she thought she had forgotten. But the past doesn't disappear. It only waits. The encrypted radio channel blinked impatiently. She reached for the mic, but before she spoke, she steadied her breathing. If she set her call sign into an active military channel, she would be stepping back into a world she had left behind without permission. She pressed the button. A faint click filled the cockpit. "This is Echo 9, she said quietly. Silence. Then a clipped voice broke through, distorted, authoritative, and painfully familiar. "Echo 9, confirm identity." Her throat tightened. She did not recognize the voice, but the tone was unmistakably official, military, direct. They weren't asking if she was alive. They were confirming something else. She answered calmly. "Identity confirmed." The response came fast this time. "Echo 9, you were declared inactive. Status unknown. Why are you aboard a civilian flight?" The captain and first officer exchanged stunned glances. Echo 9 lowered the mic slightly. She didn't want the whole cockpit to hear what she said next, but she owed them some truth. "I left the program," she said quietly. "I didn't go missing. I walked away. They didn't like that." The captain exhaled slowly. "So they've been looking for you?" "No," she corrected. "Someone reopened my file." "That's different. It means something happened today, something serious enough to pull planes out of formation and chase down a commercial flight." The radio buzzed again. Echo 9, stand by for retrieval directive. Retrieval. The word felt like a punch. The fighter jets moved again, spreading slightly, creating more distance between themselves and the passenger plane. It wasn't a threat, it was an operational reset, a repositioning for whatever order came next. Echo 9 leaned forward, pressing the mic again. This is a commercial aircraft with civilians. You cannot issue a retrieval order at altitude. Understood, the voice replied. But the directive stands. The captain shook his head. What does that mean? It means they want me off this aircraft, she said softly. And they're waiting for clearance to force an emergency landing. The first officer turned pale. Because of you? No. She corrected. Not because of who I am, but because of what they think I know. The mic buzzed again. Echo 9, intelligence breach detected. You are needed for debrief. Priority level, red. She froze. Red. There were only 3 priority levels in the operations she used to serve. Blue, black, and red. Red meant emergency. Red meant someone had broken into something they shouldn't have. Red meant someone needed a mind like hers immediately. Whatever this was, it wasn't personal. It was bigger. The captain spoke carefully. Are we in danger? Yes, she answered honestly. But not from the jets. She looked through the window at the horizon. Her instincts picked something up, something she hadn't noticed before. A faint echo in the sky. A pattern of movement that didn't belong to civilian airspace. Another jet? No, something slower. But closer. She stepped forward, squinting. Then she saw it. A dark shape far below them, rising slowly like a shadow lifting from the clouds. It had no commercial markings, no identification lights, no flight number. It didn't belong here. Echo 9's voice dropped into the steady tone she once used in open combat skies. That aircraft wasn't part of the escort. The captain followed her gaze. What is that? Before she answered, the radio crackled sharply, this time with urgency. Echo 9, do not engage. Unknown contact approaching your aircraft. Repeat, do not engage. Her heart tightened. This wasn't a recall anymore. This wasn't a routine check. Someone else was in the sky, someone who wasn't supposed to be. And Echo 9 finally understood. The jets weren't chasing her. They were protecting the plane. Because something dangerous was coming toward them. At 31,000 feet. And she was the only one on board who could recognize what it was. Asterisk. A hush fell over the cockpit as the unknown aircraft lifted higher through the clouds. It was too close, too silent, too intentional. Commercial planes didn't fly without lights. Military planes didn't hide their signatures. Nothing legitimate moved like that. Echo 9's breath deepened, steadying the instinct that rose in her. The instinct to step forward, take control, protect the sky she once knew better than the ground beneath her feet. But she wasn't in uniform now. She wasn't behind controls. She was a passenger in 12C, called back into the sky by something she didn't choose. The captain whispered, "What is it? Can you identify that aircraft?" She didn't answer immediately. She leaned closer to the window, her eyes measuring every movement, every strange glide of the dark shape below them. It wasn't rushing. It wasn't announcing itself. It was approaching with intention, as though it already knew the altitude, speed, and path of their plane. "I've seen shadows like this before," she said quietly. "Low signature reconnaissance crafts. Not common, not friendly when they hide." The first officer swallowed hard. "Is it trying to intercept us too?" "No," she said. "It's trying to reach something or someone on this flight." She didn't need to say who. The fighter jets outside suddenly broke formation. Their positions shifted sharply, forming a wide barrier between the unknown aircraft and the passenger plane. This wasn't a simple escort anymore. This was defense. Her radio crackled again, but the tone had changed, no longer calm, no longer procedural. Echo 9, we have no control over the unknown contact. Maintain cockpit position. Do not allow access to the cabin. Repeat. Do not allow access. The captain stared at her. Are they saying someone might try to board us? At 31,000 feet, Echo 9 didn't blink. There are methods. None of them safe, none of them legal. The captain braced his hands on the yoke. Tell me what we do. She turned. To him, her voice steady in a way only experience could make it. You fly straight. You don't climb. You don't descend. You don't change heading unless the jets order it. And you? He asked. She looked back toward the cabin door, the thin, ordinary door that separated calm passengers from the truth of the sky. I need to keep the passengers stable, she said. If they panic, this situation becomes 10 times harder. The first officer hesitated. Should we tell them the truth? No, she said softly. Not yet. She turned to leave the cockpit, but before she reached the door, the radio burst sharply. Echo 9, respond. Unknown contact has accelerated. Impact trajectory uncertain. Be advised you may be target. She froze. Target. The fighter jets. Outside angled sharply, engines roaring as they repositioned. Their wings cut the sunlight, their bodies darting like blades across the sky. A military ballet that only appeared when something was truly wrong. The unknown aircraft rose faster now, shadows crawling across its surface as though it carried its own storm. She pressed the mic. This is Echo 9. Why am I being targeted? What breach happened? Static. Then a single line. Your old files were accessed. Someone is trying to extract you. Her blood ran cold. Someone wasn't trying to harm the commercial plane. Someone wanted her alive. The unknown aircraft burst through the cloud layer below them, close enough now for its sharp outline to be visible. Not a drone. Not a fighter. Something in between, small, fast, maneuverable. Designed for retrieval, not destruction. The captain whispered, they knew what flight you were on. Yes, she said. Which means someone on the ground is involved. The unknown craft inched closer, ignoring the fighter jets entirely. One jet swerved across its nose, warning it back, but the shadowy aircraft didn't flinch. Its focus was locked onto one point. Seat 12C. Captain, she said quietly, lock the cockpit door. He did. The plane jolted lightly as the jets outside took defensive positions. The shadows of their wings crossed the sunlight as if shielding. The aircraft from above. Echo 9 pressed the mic again. What are my orders? The voice responded with urgent clarity. Echo 9. You decide. You're the only one who knows the counter protocol. The cockpit fell silent. The captain stared at her. Counter protocol? You mean you've handled something like this before? She looked at him calmly, the weight of her past finally settling on her shoulders. Yes, she said. I have. And what is the protocol? He asked. Her eyes moved toward the window, toward the fighter jets risking their lives, toward the dark aircraft rising too fast, toward the silent sky that had pulled her back. She inhaled slowly. Then she gave the only answer the sky would ever accept from someone like her. I take control. She reached for the emergency override headset hanging beside the captain's seat. Headset only used by trained pilots or military liaisons. The captain whispered, You're going to fly. US? No, she said, slipping the headset into place. My hands won't touch the controls, but my voice will guide everything. The jets outside shifted the moment she activated the channel. The unknown aircraft rose higher. The passengers behind the door still thought everything was normal. And Echo 9, once forgotten, once silent, stepped back into the sky she once commanded, with nothing but her voice, and that was enough to change everything.